Joining me on today's podcast is world champion triathlete Beth Potter. There is so much about this woman that inspires me. Her story is what makes her one of the most interesting individuals in the sport. Her continued success is having a profound effect around the world. Beth's journey to the top was not an easy one, balancing a job to fund her dream of competing at the highest level. For me, she is the definition of grit and determination. Age is often seen as a limiting factor, but Beth defies this and continues to broaden the mind of what's possible. When is it too late to start something? The answer is never. Beth is testament to that. The process is a valuable part of the outcome. In this episode, we will hear why. It is so good to finally meet you, Beth. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, it's been an exciting day. Just got my second selection for the Olympic Games. So been busy with some media and a nice lunch out, and now I'm here.
What's the process like? I mean, it must be so surreal. I mean, even like you just saying that now is so blasé. I've just been selected for the Olympics.
Well, I think because I've kind of known now for, I guess, a couple of months. But it's not been official, so I kind of also had to keep it a secret. So yeah, it's nice that it's like, official. I'm going, my ticket's booked. Yeah.
Do you feel like when the first time you were announced, can that feeling be replicated or does it feel different?
I think when I qualified back in 2016 for the track team in Rio, it was a very different experience. I was very young for a start, and also just felt like I couldn't concentrate. Every 4 or 5 seconds I'd just lose concentration, and I'm trying to teach a class full of 32 kids science lesson, and I just couldn't keep my train of thought. Whereas now it feels a bit different, and obviously circumstances are different. I'm going now with the hope of coming back with a medal, whereas when I was competing on the track, I was just I knew I wasn't medal contender.
I'm just so fascinated by you and your story. And, the thing is, you can introduce you as this world champion triathlete, and it's amazing. But I think your journey to getting to that point for me is what is so fascinating of how you, it's so unique. I think when you listen to somebody being introduced as a world champion, you just assume that from a young age that was what they were destined to be. They had that talent, but actually you've made the transition into becoming a triathlete. You weren't before.
I come from a track and field background.
What distance specifically for those?
Yeah, so I competed in the 10K and, loved the track. I've always loved running, but I got into running through swimming. So I guess the natural progression would be to throw a cycling discipline in there and do triathlon. But yeah, it was a bit later on in life that I decided to do that. And it has been a journey, and it's been a very rewarding journey, but also very difficult along the way. And I think, to get to this point and to be making a team in my second Olympics and, realistically this time trying to go and come back with a medal, I think it's exciting, but it's also been a lot of hard work along the way.
I was watching a video where you were talking about your transition into it, where when you decided to take up triathlon, am I right in saying you hadn't cycled? Is this right? Oh no, you'd never cycled and you hadn't swam for 8 years. Now, you were an exceptional swimmer at a young age.
Yeah. I mean, I could ride a bike,
right,
but I'd never used the clip-in pedals.
Gotcha.
So I'd never been attached to my bike.
Gotcha.
Sort of thing.
Which is a whole different ballgame.
There was a lot of new things, and there was a lot of new skills I had to pick up, which, by the way, is quite hard doing that as an adult. Learning to ride a bike and knowing the consequences if you fall off the bike.
Is there a big difference then from riding a regular bike to the types of bike that you guys would ride in that competitive space?
I think for me, it was more, being comfortable riding in close proximity with a group of people, and then also learning about the tactics that come with bike racing. And the only way you can really do that is by throwing yourself into races.
Did you find getting yourself back into swimming, obviously having sort of a foundation from a young age, was it something that you were able to transition into relatively easy?
did take time, and I picked up a couple of niggles and injuries along the way, just because I spent so long at the water. But it's like I say, like riding a bike. Once you kind of learn how to do it, you don't really forget that technique. So it came back quicker than I thought.
Do you find when it comes to something like triathlon specifically, is it very rare for a certain individual to be good at all three?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of people that are, solid at all three. But I think to be, the best or one of the best in the world, I think you need to have one that's outstanding or, better than the rest.
Which one for you would that be?
The run. Yeah.
I guess coming from the track and field, that was the advantage you had. I mean, Lucy Charles Barkley, she would be one of your competitors, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, hers would be, was it swimming?
No,
was her
she's
foundation?
pretty solid across all three, but she's obviously she competes in the longer distance. But yeah, she's a very good swimmer and strong on the bike as well.
When you look back at where you were at and where you are now in terms of maybe the change of environment and maybe the more freedom you have to invest in what you're doing, has that had improvements? Because I think for a lot of people that wouldn't know, I mean, you at the last games, you were a physics teacher in London.
Yeah.
How do you balance the level of training you've got to do with a job?
I couldn't afford just to do running full time because I didn't have the money, so I had to work. And I enjoyed it at the same time as well, but it was hard. You're getting up at 5:30, getting your training in before work. You're then working a full day with kids, and it's difficult. Like, it's challenging. It does break you sometimes. And then you're going and training in the evening as well. And, I found the winter really hard because I wouldn't see daylight until the weekend, really.
Were there any positives to take from it in terms of, did you find it was like a healthy distraction at all?
Yeah, I think it was healthy because it kind of meant that, everything didn't depend on just an outcome of a race. I had a job at the end of the day, an important job as well. You're shaping kids' kind of lives. And I think that was important for me, and I used running as not a distraction, but it was kind of, I guess it was a distraction. It was something that I could, be dedicated to outside of work, and it gave me a purpose, and it gave me a drive.
What was the defining moment for you where you just basically went, you know what? It's time to make a substantial change here. Was it just a case of there were more financials coming in that gave you the freedom to do it? Or was it a case of, I've got to make quite a bold decision here that I've got to potentially quit this job and just give my all to something and just bank on it working?
The real turning point for me was, I put so much into qualifying for the Olympics, and then going to Rio and racing, and then racing really badly because I had a vomiting bug, and just the disappointment after Rio was just another level, and it took me a while to go over that. And I think that was definitely the turning point for me. I just needed to do something different. I needed a different challenge, different goal. I just needed something completely different.
And you ended up moving to Leeds. I'm fascinated. Why is it so many of our athletes are moving to Leeds? What is it about that hub? I mean, I remember training many years ago. I spent the day with Alistair Brownlee, and for him, he is just hell-bent on that being the place to train. He absolutely loves it. And the more individuals like yourself that I meet, there's just seems to be such a passion around that area. Is it because the facilities are better, or is it the terrain that it offers you versatility?
I think it's just got a lot on offer. It's very close to the Yorkshire Dales, which is great for training. I think people from Leeds, being able to get through winters in Leeds, I think it gives you an added edge on race day. Well, not just Leeds, but the north of England. I think it does give you an added kind of toughness.
I suppose you are surrounded by some really exceptional individuals.
Yeah.
And for you, ultimately, if you want to dominate the world, then you need to be surrounded by those types of people, right?
If you surround yourself with people who are high achievers, then hopefully, you will be the average of that. And I think that's just testament to, me moving to Leeds. And I didn't have anything when I moved to Leeds. I was a teacher. I'd been to one Olympics. And now I'm world champion, and I think definitely hats off to the environment I've put myself in up there.
What do you think has been the formula that's been the most important to you for you to achieve the successes that you've got?
I think consistency, turning up day in, day out, regardless of the weather, regardless of your attitude. I think, making sure you do all the little bits right and just turning up, even if it's a bad session, just getting it done. And also, I don't know, I think a lot of it is down to mental side as well, just having that belief in yourself. And that's definitely something I've really had to work at, especially in the last year. Just kind of that kind of deep inner belief in yourself.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, we had Alex Yee on and he was talking about the psyche around it. Is that something that you've personally, I mean, you were talking about you struggling after the games. Is that something that you've had to work on?
Because you spend so much time like working on your physical health. You're, going to the gym and doing all the hours of training. You do 30 hours of training a week. Like, why should you neglect the mental side?
And do you think that's something that still has question marks around it? Do you find there's athletes out there that may have the reluctance to
Yeah.
invest in something like that?
Yeah, I do. I think there's almost like people are maybe scared to admit that they're mentally weaker. Um, I'm just not. And I just, yeah, I wanted to make sure that I covered all bases, and that was one that I felt like I needed help with.
I'd love to know from your side of things, what do you think are the biggest pressures mentally?
No one has ever really put pressure on me. It's all come from myself. It's all self-inflicted. It's only because I set very high standards for myself, and I know what's good and what I want to achieve. And it's funny because when I went into Pontevedra, which is the grand final, and everything was on the line there between me and the French favourite, and I actually went in second. And the thing I was struggling with was not finishing second. It was more how I was going to feel if I finished second. I just didn't want to come away from that, having known that I gave it everything, to just be disappointed.
There are times where you may have won a race and it may not have felt the way that you expected it to. And there are times where you may not have even placed or come third and probably felt better.
Yeah, no, I often have that. And, last year, if I'd finished top 5 in a race, I would have been over the moon with that, because it was a massive step up for me. Um, I just would have been really happy with that. I would have thought that's a really solid result. But then flip it on its head this year when I went into the second race of the season, and I finished 6th, and I made so many silly mistakes because I got flustered. I'd just come off the back of an injury, and it was my first race since kind of getting back from that injury. And I remember sitting on the plane and being so disappointed, and then I cried about it for weeks afterwards. And looking back now, like going up in the helicopter and looking back on the season as a whole, I look at that and I thought, well, you finished 6th. You would have taken that immediately last year. And it just shows how far you've come.
Do you think that's the hard thing though, is actually being able to reflect on the journey that you have had and how far you've actually come? Because I think that's the problem, right? Is that often we look at the present moment, but actually when we look to the past, if you were to say to yourself, I'm going to position 6th,
Yeah.
like you said, I think the elation that you probably would have felt, but in that present moment, I guess because of what you've been through, it's maybe de-emphasized, which I think is a shame, because actually when you look at the sacrifice that you've put into it and the hard work, you're doing so much, and unfortunately the results aren't always going to go your way. But I think ultimately, if you feel proud or fulfilled by what it is that you're doing, sometimes maybe that should come before the number that you position.
I think what I've learned over the course of many years is that regardless of the performance, if it's been, a win, if it's been 5th place, if it's been last place, never spend more than 24 hours either celebrating it or being sad about it. Because at the end of the day, the outcome is still the same. You still need to get back to work. You still need to put the work in and get back to the grind, because you're not going to win the next race or by, not doing the training. So
So interesting you say that. So you would never allow yourself more than 24
now
hours?
I don't. Yeah, I'm
Wow.
I'm better at taking the time off after a race and enjoying it, but also, being really cross with myself and then just forgetting about it.
What do you think it takes to become world champion? Do you think it is natural ability, or do you think it is just the sheer commitment to the sport?
I was speaking to Alex about this the other day, and I think the triathlon world champs is probably one of the hardest to win because it's not just a one day, one race situation. It's 4 races throughout the season plus the grand finale. And all of those days you need to be on top form. So I think, yeah, you can put all the training and all the hard work and, put all the hours in across the winter, across the year. But I think you do need to have a bit of luck as well on race day.
Can you describe what that feeling's like when you become world champion?
It still hasn't sunk in, and it's funny. I was swimming up and down the pool the other day and kind of just lost and thought doing something, probably not focusing on my training, but I was just swimming up and down, and I kind of was laughing to myself that, like, I'm world champion, but I don't get treated any differently. They still, everyone just treats me the same. Everyone, yeah, there's no difference in me. Like, I'm humbled at training.
Do you think was the feeling more or less than what you expected, or is it just the feeling that you can't really describe?
This is the thing, though, because I've won one world championship now, but it's still, you're now thinking about next year. You're now thinking, okay, well, I want another one. You're just never satisfied. And that's the annoying thing about what we do, is that, you could have one world championship win, but you want two. And then you get two and you want three. I think it's just you want more all the time and nothing's ever enough.
Is there anyone in the sport or in general that you find aspirational, that pushes you want to push further?
My other competitors definitely, I'm thinking about them when I'm training, because I'm thinking, right, how can I be better than these people? How can I have an added edge on race day? How am I going to beat Cassandra on the run? Like that crosses my mind most days. How can I be better? And I think the Brownlees, for me, like, they're the reason I do triathlon. They're the reason I moved to Leeds. And I train with them every day. Alistair, coaches me or has an involvement in my coaching program. So, that's just a massive inspiration for me.
This is what I think I love about running and triathlon and these sports, is that the community is just so supportive.
Like, I'm obviously a triathlete, but I jump in with the runners when I'm in Leeds. I do sessions with them and they help me get through some really tough sessions, and then I jump in with the cyclists. So it's quite a nice community where you help off each other.
What is your reason for doing triathlon other than the successes that come from it? Like, I would love to know what your why is behind this.
I think for me, when I left running, I like to have challenges, and triathlon was a new challenge for me. It was something different, something I'd never done before. It was nice to see, improvement day on day and every week, because you can, like, measure it and you can see yourself getting better. And I'm also just not very good at quitting anything. Like, I've got a really annoying trait with that. And I think, yeah, just that drive to try and be really good at something and see how far I can get.
Is it just one of those things with yourself where as long as the body keeps going and you still have a love for it, you'll just keep going with it? Is that where you get the joy and the fulfillment from? Because it's one of those things, again, right, where you could end up coming out of this as like 6-time world champion, but it might get to the point, you see certain individuals in certain spaces, Beth, where it starts to become more about maybe the financial than it would be actually about the outcome.
Yeah, no, I think I'm sure I'll know when the time's right to call it a day, and hopefully it's on my terms, like, not my body telling me that I need to stop. But yeah, I just love it. I love what I do, and that makes it so much easier.
Do you think people have felt really inspired and have connected with you on, I guess, you coming into doing a triathlon at such a later date in your career? And do you think that opens people's imaginations as to what is possible? That sometimes if you start something, it doesn't have to be from the earliest of ages?
Yeah, I really hope that that I am a role model. I really hope that young girls, young boys look up to me, and or maybe they're not into, cycling, or maybe they've got the same background as me. And I hope that, it inspires kids that they can do it, because it hasn't been easy, and it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of determination and persistence and resilience. But I think, it's possible. You just have to, back yourself and surround yourself with the right people.
Do you find as a female it is harder in this space?
We're probably one of the only sports where we have equal pay for men and women.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so the prize money is equal.
This week's episode is sponsored by Runner. Runner is a personalized running coaching app helping runners of all abilities train for any goal. From a first 5K to a marathon, even an ultra marathon. When the time is right for you, your plan can be created within a minute and ready to go. With each plan, Runner provides all the help a runner requires, including strength and conditioning, and you can also reach out to the team at any time via the support tab inside the app. For a 2-week free trial on any personalized running plan, use the code PHOENIX. No matter your goal, Runner is there to help you achieve it. Do you think the Super League itself has been a big input in that investment within the sport in terms of how exciting it actually is? Because for me, there are so many sports where it just feels a little bit dated, and actually I think the entertainment value is what has to come as well with the performance.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously kind of different franchises within triathlon. So you have the World Triathlon, is what I do, which is the Olympic and the sprint, and super sprint, which is the relay, mixed team relay. And that's all based around Olympic points and qualifying for the Olympics, which is very attractive to a lot of us. It's very attractive to me. And then you have Super League Triathlon, which is a kind of franchise where it's fun racing. Yeah. Like, Super League's really fun. It's really engaging. Half the time we don't know what's going on because it's so fast paced, but it's really good to watch. And I think they're very different, but I love doing both of them. And then you obviously have the kind of longer distance racing, which with the PTO and then Ironman racing, and that's different. And sometimes a lot of the short course athletes will transition into that.
Do you think it's nice to have that variety for yourself psychologically, so you're not just solely focusing on the same thing? Break it up.
Yeah, I think with triathlon is actually, for me anyway, I find the training much more interesting, because you have 3 different sports and you have different things within those 3 different sports to work on, whether it's the kind of endurance or the tactical side. So it is, there is a lot more going on, which I like, and I find the training really interesting. And a lot of runners now are doing a lot of cross training, because it takes the stress off your body, and it's a bit more, it's kinder to the body. Running, I don't know, 150 miles a week is not very sustainable.
I mean, for you to have a sustainable career, you've got to keep that body as intact as possible, as well as obviously the mental. What approach have you taken to achieve that?
I've surrounded myself with people who value things like eating well and sleeping, getting enough sleep and rest and recovery. I think you definitely can't scrimp on that, and it will catch up with you.
What do you think's been your Achilles heel that you've had to work on?
I used to really struggle with getting to sleep. Sounds weird. I used to get anxious about not being able to fall asleep.
Interesting.
Yeah, problems.
Wow. Is that just because it was like a progressive thing where you just did struggle to sleep and then you just started to think about it?
Yeah, and I would then get stressed, like, I'm not sleeping, but I've got to get up, and it would just snowball. And actually, it was only until lockdown that it got better. I don't know. A lot of people were getting anxious in the lockdown, and I went the opposite way. I felt like I was less anxious.
Do you find that your life is very different to what some might ordinarily or would find ordinary in terms of social life?
I've had, I've missed a lot of friends' weddings this year, and that's hard. But on the other side, I have a very supportive network of friends who understand and even caveat the kind of invitation with, don't feel like you have to come out, understand if you've got races, So I'm very lucky with that. And I've got friends and family that are very supportive and fully, this is not forever.
When it comes to things like triathlon, what is like the typical time frame for, would it be the same for both men and women, or would it differ? I mean, the thing is for me, like age is actually irrelevant. I think ultimately, as long as you feel great and you're loving what you're doing and the performances are there, may it continue. But do you find, is there like a sweet spot or a point where they tend to say that that's kind of like the peak?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to think about age because, everyone told me I was too old to make the next Olympics. I'll only be 32 next summer. So I try and, because I don't feel 32. I mean, I feel 21.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you're world champion at what, 30, it's a 30,
One,
31. If you're world champion at 31, then I don't really, who is to say?
Yeah, I think as long as you, as long as you feel, young enough and your body's not, preventing you from doing the training and competing, then I think, just go for as long as possible.
For me, men or women or younger children, to see you achieving what you're doing at that age, I think is such an amazing thing. And we're finding more and more people now coming into this sport at a lot older age group, which I think is fantastic, as well as younger. And I think that's what's brilliant about these sports. Like I said, is just the inclusivity with it. And I think you just you're never too old to start.
No, definitely. And if you look back at when I was putting my case together to kind of prove them wrong, I was looking back at the last, 3-4 Olympic cycles and the winners or the medalists from those cycles, and they're all in their 30s. The women are all in their 30s.
Do you think that comes down to experience? Is that the advantage that you have with age?
I think, you definitely have experience. And then you've also been doing sport for a long time. So you've just been chipping away for years and years, getting stronger. And I think, women are stronger, obviously to a certain age, but you just get stronger with age. Up to a certain age.
But I guess also, like, to think, you've got a partner that you're connected with, you've got your dog that you love, you're in an area that you adore, surrounded by people that inspire you.
Yeah.
I think there seems to be so many different pillars there that are so vital to the outcome.
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with, if you're happy in your kind of home life and all that goes with that, then I think your performances will come through because, that part of your life you're content with. And I think that definitely helps. And, the support from David and it's just unmatched.
What do you think are the biggest pressures that you feel?
Biggest pressures? I think it's all self-inflicted. Yeah. Rather
than the external?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've got the pressure of, I've got a lot of very good sponsors and there's pressure to perform year on year, but that also comes from my own sort of like how I want to do as well. So
So I mean, the outcome, like you said, the outcome of what you do and the results, that's what again makes it kind of a unique sport, because you are really only as good as your last performance, right? In some respects. And certainly from a sponsorship point of view, ultimately they need their product to be showcased to as many people as many times as it can be within that year.
I mean, it's literally the definition of performance related pay.
It's crazy, right? And like, I really struggle with that to a degree. I can understand from a brand's point of view, their logic behind that, but I just think the pressure that then puts on the athlete, because unfortunately there are some out there that will sustain substantial injuries or illnesses and it will give them setbacks. And I think to know that literally every run you do or swim or cycle determines what you're going to be paid, that in itself I don't think is conducive to creating the ultimate athlete. Yeah, I mean, it is difficult and but I mean, I think that's just the way it is, unfortunately. What do you think is like the ultimate outcome for you? I mean, obviously to stay fulfilled, but do you just think, is there a set target in your head of what your ambition is to achieve?
Yeah, and I'm like almost scared to say it out loud, but say
it. No. Say it, Beth. You want to hear
like
it.
Coming home from Paris with a couple of medals would be awesome.
Yeah. For you to even be at the Olympics though, do you appreciate how amazing that actually is and what it's taken for you to get to that point?
Yeah, so this is the thing, you just don't really have the time to stop and think, and I think that is something that will come, post-career when I look back on my career as a whole. But it's almost like you don't want to stop and think about that just yet. You want to just keep going, keep plowing on.
Which is, I guess, is kind of challenging, right? Because what you are experiencing, so few people who have ever walked this earth will ever experience. To even have a phone call or an email to say you've been selected to represent Great Britain at the Olympics Games. How many people can say that they've had that?
I know, it's funny though, but a lot of my friends have.
Well, yeah, I guess. But then you are it seems strange because it seems like the majority in your environment, but in mine, that would be the minority.
Exactly.
Not many people have the bragging right to say that they've been selected or have even gone to an Olympic Games. And I mean, the talent now that's going to the games is just, it's exceptional, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's quite funny because I remember when David first met, like, some of my friends, he was a bit blown away because he's like, "Oh, I follow these people on Instagram, but I don't have dinner with them." So it's like, I think, and for me, it's just normal. Like, Alex is just Alex to me.
Who's Alex? Can you give reference to who Alex is to people?
Alex Yee. Alex is just Alex
Yee.
Yee.
Sorry, we're talking about Alex Yee here. Yeah. I mean,
but people will look at Alex and be like, he's a double Olympic medalist.
How do you think you can try make the sport and yourself relatable to people? Because I think sometimes you being an Olympian and being a world champion, people will inevitably put you onto that pedestal. Do you think it is just documenting and showcasing your day-to-day life with them and the ups and the downs that come with it? Because I think what we tend to see, I think maybe more so in your space, is you kind of have to have this like impenetrable wall up where it's always about being positive and the outcome and the big desires. But the reality is that you know what it's like. Everyone is vulnerable in life. That is inevitable.
The thing, people only see, when the Olympics is on every 4 years, and people see like the glory in that one performance on the one day at the Olympics. They see, someone winning or someone finishing on the podium. What they don't see is the 12 years in the run up to that, and the setbacks and the injuries and the poor performances and, I don't know, getting lapped out of races. They don't see all those, or, they don't see those days. But that's part of it. We're still human. We still have setbacks. We still cry.
Yeah.
We still have really bad days.
When you have those bad days and setbacks, what is it that gets you through it? Is it the people that are closest to you, or is there something that can motivate you?
I write down, if I think it's been a bad day, like I look for evidence of why it was a bad day. And I usually find more good than bad in that day.
That's really interesting.
In your head, I do anyway. I just kind of go to the negative, and that like kind of consumes my thoughts. Like, I do it with races a lot, actually. I'll, after, for example, a bad race, I'll go and write down a reflection after the race and I literally put a bullet point, positive, negative, and then actions. And I usually come away with more positives than negatives. And then that makes me flip and think, okay, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought.
I had a psychologist where I went to them once with an issue I had, and I was really struggling and it was starting to hinder my performances. And I said, I think this is the situation. They went, it's not the case. If I was to remove this individual from your life or put you into a different place, how would you feel? And I was like a completely different person. And they came back to me and they said, what you're struggling right now is you are situationally unhappy or you are environmentally unhappy.
Yeah.
And amending those things can make all the difference. And that made such an impact into my life and my performances then moving forwards, because I think, like yourself, there's sometimes you look at things in such a negative way, and actually on reflection, when you can jot those things down, it can just amend it literally within the second.
Yeah, and I found that I just use this triathlete system now. So just red, amber, green. And instead of, I still have moments where I go into the red where, it's all based on like emotion and, I just go straight into the red and get angry, upset, cross, whatever. Whereas if I stop and I go to amber, I can be like, right, is there any evidence for me thinking of this? Okay, no. So I'm going to go green because there's evidence that I can do this, this, and this. And I'm not basing it off just like emotion, raw emotion after a bad race.
You can face these hurdles, and I think it is the passion that gets you past that. And it's inevitable. You are going to face many hurdles in life.
But it also makes it easier, because if you love what you do, it's just a little bit easier than having it as a slog.
Well, I think the gratitude that I have is, I think to be able to wake up every day and love what you do and know that what you are doing is making such an impact. That's, I think, what's the beauty of running running, triathlon, tennis, whatever it might be, like knowing that is improving someone's life in some way, because, everyone has a story, I think, to be told. That's why I think marathons and any event for that matter is so powerful, because you've got so many individuals from different walks of life who have been inspired to be there, whatever that reason might be. But also, as we've discussed, like them testing their perceived limitations and understanding how much further that they can go. And I think individuals like yourself that are, enabling that to happen is just so important. Do you think right now, obviously your focus is to continue to dominate triathlon for many, many, many years? Do you look at what you're potentially going to do post that, or do you think it is, listen, I'm not even going to focus on anything past other than what I'm doing? Or do you think something like coaching is something that you will look to heavily invest in after?
I really don't know what I'll do. I'm hoping, I have always got the teaching to fall back on if I want to go back to that, if I need a job. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't. That's the honest answer. I'm hoping maybe a door opens up with something that I do. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's good to keep options open, and there's lots of things I could do.
Well, I think if you look at 10 years ago, when you talk about doors opening and look at where you're at right now.
Yeah, exactly.
What does the next 10 years have in store?
Yeah, I think it's just, important to say, yes to things and get involved and, surround yourself with good people.
If you have someone out there right now who is maybe questioning themselves, has that disbelief in what they can achieve, what words can you give them to hopefully kickstart their journey?
I think, don't be afraid to make changes. That's one thing. Change is scary. It is, because you're doing something with your comfort zone. And I think that's what I did. I wasn't happy doing something, running, teaching. I wasn't happy doing that anymore, and I felt like I needed a change. And it was a big change, but, it has paid off, and it was difficult. It's been really difficult along the way, but I don't regret anything. I think it's made me stronger. It's definitely made me the person I am today. And I think just don't be afraid to take the first step. And that it is scary, because there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of unknown, and nothing's guaranteed. But if you want something enough, like, what are you going to lose by trying it?
What do you think is the most important thing for people to focus on? The outcome?
No.
Oh?
Not the outcome. No.
Or the journey?
The process, 100%. And even, looking back and, take any race, for example, I never go into a race thinking I'm going to be on the podium. Never think about the outcome.
For you, is it just a case of, I just want to have the best possible race I can and enjoy it?
But you need to break that down. Like, having the best possible race, how are you going to have the best possible race? It's by, having the right attitude going into the swim, lining on the, standing on the pontoon in the right position. The first 10 strokes, it's about transitioning well. It's about, head down for the first 5 minutes of the bike. All these things are, if I do all these things right, I know I'll have a good performance. So I just think of those bits in the race. Because as soon as I start going to thinking of myself crossing the finish line, I'll make a mistake. So it's just about doing the little bits right, and that kind of, builds into the bigger picture, and you have a big positive in the outcome.
When you look at your journey, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned?
Biggest lesson I've learned in my journey is to be patient. I'm not good at being patient. I'm very impatient.
So no matter what the ability, what the goal in life, just be patient.
Be patient and trust the process. Because you got to have some belief. You got to back yourself.
Would you say trust the process and trust the people around you?
Definitely. Yeah. I put my whole trust in everyone that works with me.
What would you say has been the most valuable influence in your journey to this point?
I don't know. I really respect and believe in, Alistair, and the things that he tells me to do, and the belief that he has in me, and I just fully trust, the training that he sets me.
Thank you so much for coming today. I've absolutely loved chatting to you, and it's just it's surreal and so exciting to know what you have coming ahead in 2024, and we're all absolutely rooting for you. And actually, do you know what? It's not even about luck. I think with the determination, the mindset, and the passion that you have for this sport, the results are going to come with it, whatever that might be. And I think by the sounds of things, you're getting the process absolutely right. And I think so many people can come away from this just so inspired by what you've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's been great.
Go smash it in Paris and make us proud.
Hopefully.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, you fatted biscuit, all I ask of you in return is that you push that subscribe button and leave a review. Unless it's a bad one, you can keep that, you sausage. Your support, though, makes such a difference to this podcast and enables it to grow and connect with even more people around the world.